Tower Fantasy is one of the biggest mobile games to release this year, with over 4 million pre-registrations as of August 9th. Which is something I actually had to go back and change in this script multiple times because the player number just kept shooting up. With the Herculean success of Genshin Impact, it was only a matter of time before another one of these console-level mobile games would release. But how did they get here? From being called nothing more than a Genshin clone in previous years, how did they build up this level of hype and excitement? How did they survive their controversies and create something special? When Tower Fantasy was announced, it was quickly brushed off as nothing more than a cheap Genshin clone. There was still a loud minority who did still have some excitement towards the game, including myself, but at the time Genshin Impact was thriving and its players weren't so easy to sway over to this new game. But I'm about to tell you why Tower Fantasy was able to succeed in 6 simple words. Massively multiplayer open world role-playing game. The MMO genre is one of the largest and fastest growing in video games, and with games like Final Fantasy XIV running out of digital copies at its peak, with that growth comes a plethora of new audiences who are always looking for the next MMO to play. And although it's not considered a true MMORPG by any means, to many this will be enough to scratch that MMO itch. You know, when a new MMO comes out and people play it for like a month before dropping it? Yeah, this is basically what's happening with this game right now. This aspect was something that one of the biggest and most successful gachas of all time, Genshin Impact, didn't do. Tower Fantasy had their gap in the market and their exact method for making their game a long-lasting success. But even still, MMORPGs fail all the time, so what's different? Well, ladies and gentlemen, their next move is something even they had absolutely zero control over. Delays. Tower of Fantasy, like many games in recent years, had to undergo some delays. This was beneficial for its global launch, as with the passage of time, its target audience would begin to grow tired of their games, eagerly waiting for updates so they could be given just a little more content. But it still wasn't enough. Genshin would be facing content droughts in between updates, and after years of looting chests and artifact farming, players began to lose the same spark of excitement that was there at launch, and would soon begin to look for other games to play, which was only natural. But around this period came the announcement of Tower of Fantasy's closed beta. Taking in all the previous factors, people began to check what this game had to offer, and they were hooked. The game's global community began to grow incredibly fast, and interest in the game would reach a new all-time high. With so many eyes on one thing, people would begin to notice some things others didn't. Some dark things that they would rather not bring up. I'll explain those in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the gameplay. Yes, it's some kind of RPG, and with that comes RPG mechanics, such as customization, and with customization comes a boob slider. I meant to say role-playing your favorite anime characters after being thrown into this wonderful world full of color with fields of lush greenery, snowy forests, and all sorts of creatures in between. You're taken on a journey to discover and explore and interact with characters of this world to take down an evil organization. The characters you meet are characters you gacha for. Wait. Doesn't this sound very familiar to another game? Well, besides the customization, yes. This sounds like Genshin Impact, and Tower of Fantasy knows this, so instead of allowing you to gacha for the characters you get, instead you gacha for their weapons and are able to use the characters as a skin. On top of this, you are able to meet other players in the world, ask for help, and kill bosses together, and use things like global chat, which makes the world feel full of players and very massively multiplayer. On top of that, the combat design here is unique too, with you having to swap between your weapons for effective combat, as well as using a well-placed dodge to freeze your enemies in place. You also have things like relics, which are gadgets you find in the world as tools for combat and exploration. All this while the beautiful world music plays and you can relax and enjoy your experience. Even their gacha system is slightly different here and arguably more fair. It seems like these developers looked at everything Genshin had built, and instead of copy it directly, they asked, well, what can we twist to add to this and make it our own, to make something familiar feel truly original. All praise aside, earlier I mentioned some dark secrets, and yes, here we are. They were not always so driven by standing out. In fact, they had incidents of stealing assets from other games and even stealing entire trailers. I don't know why you would steal a trailer, but that's just impressive. This was something that affected their global perception, as big creators would often bring these things into light, making the game seem even more like a cheap Genshin knockoff. However, what I'm about to say is super important for everyone who sees this video. They didn't let that negativity define them. Yes, these are devs that want the same level of fame and success as Genshin Impact, and it's obvious. And they may have used methods and tactics that are usually deemed unacceptable, but it never defined them as developers. They didn't let that negativity hold them back and continue to create and innovate despite it. We see this trend more and more in gaming, and I'm happy it's happening worldwide, with games like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077 both facing massive controversies and shame, but having developer talent with enough resilience to continue passionately creating and putting their soul into what they make. And that's what leads to a dedicated fanbase and positive reception. We can see when someone actually tries. Take this video and Genshin Impact. Both have a good amount of effort and passion put into them, because their creators love what they do. The goal first and foremost is to create a good game or a good video. Tower of Fantasy is just that, a good game. So to wrap this video up, Genshin Impact is super successful. It's a titan in the mobile space right now. And with that, there was obviously going to be some kind of competition eventually, something that would take its formula and try to replicate that success. And Tower of Fantasy seems to be the first game to try and take a bite out of the pie. And honestly, I'm very excited to see what other games do this next, because the quality of these games are only going to get better, and eventually we're going to have a game that is just on par or even better than everything set before it, elevating the standard once again. So at the end of the day, the players always win. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out some of this Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts content on the channel, and I'll see you all